cosmology episode. It has been a while since I did cosmology episodes, and I'm feeling called to talk about this and feeling called to do that as recent discussions about standardizing astrology or trying to get astrology to look more like science or to look more like science in the way that other people may view it, or to fit our image into a certain form so that people will take us seriously. And people have been talking about meta data and all kind of rigorous forms that we know in other sciences. And I'm not saying that they couldn't bring value, but that got me back to the cargo cult sciences that Richard Feynman was talking about. So, what was the cargo cult sciences? Basically, they're discussing, I think it was a tribe that had an airplane landing there. And so, after the plane landed and left, the tribe wanted to get another airplane. So, they did something that really resembles astrological magic from the more traditional point of view. They basically prepared a sculpture that looked like an airplane, and they imitated the exact situation that they were in when the original plan landed and waited for the plan to land. Now, from the scientific perspective, okay, from Feynman perspective, no plan landed. Okay, so what they were doing, it was ritualistic, but it was not scientific. It's not a way to get a plan to land. You need to build a plane, you need to experiment, and we know how much air learning there is until a plan lands, right? That being said, there's another point of view at this situation, and that is that when we are doing magic or astrological magic, and I've experimented with that only a bit, and I saw how accurate things are, okay, and how they can be counterintuitive. Like I can be doing something that doesn't seem logical according to the method that works for everyone, but it does work for me. So, how should I say it? Within a ritual of astrological magic, basically you have the numbers of the planet, you have the symbols that you draw in, and some people are more time sensitive. Like if you buy talismans by Sphere and Sundry, they're very time sensitive, they're prepared months ahead, there's a very meticulous ritual that they follow. Um, and the innovation is that they do that not with old, like the metal way, but also with candles, with soaps, with everyday things that don't may not last that long, but also that's the point. Okay, maybe you just need a little Regulus magic for this conference, or maybe you just need some Antares magic for a career issue or whatnot, and this is how you use them. Another Another school is more like Christopher Warnock. So while Christopher Warnock is time sensitive, his belief is I'm working with angelic beings. And because I'm working with angelic beings and I'm calling also the divine and I'm doing it religiously, I also apply to the non-materia in a way that is more flexible. And so that while the time matters, it is okay for certain things not to be exact because I'm working with angelic beings and I'm asking for angelic, like I'm establishing a relationship, and the talisman itself, it's a portal. So it's not that I get, let's say, a gold talisman from Christopher Warnock and this is supposed to shelter. No, it's a portal to the spirit of Algol that I can invoke. Um, and then there is the preservation. After I get the talisman, I have to consecrate it every couple of months, so to maintain the relationship and to maintain the portal. Okay? So this is combination, and there are people who call on astrological deities also regardless of the time. Let's say right now you need someone to protect you, so you call the spirit of Denebalget, you call the spirit of Mars or one of the fixed stars, and you just call on the spirit like you would call on God. Non-duality accommodates and allows for the diversity in praxis methods and their efficacy. That being said, from the vantage point of the scientific method and what you can study with science, it is considered like cargo cult, except that the plane does land. Okay? So I probably wouldn't rely on channeling and magic only if I wanted to learn how to fly a plane or drive a car. That being said, it is not impossible that a divine intervention, if I would allow for it and call for it, would assist me in case of a crisis or to avoid a crisis. Um, or to pay attention, look there, and that is also something that happens. So when we talk about trying to resemble a scientific method in order to get noticed, we basically are reducing our field that is mainly ritualistic to get the right reading at the right time. Um, it's true that the astrology works and so on and so forth, but if you're doing astrological magic, if you're doing remediation, it's mainly ritualistic. You're calling on the spirit of something, and in some methods, you adjust for the timing. So, from the double blind randomized control tests point of view, which is not even fitting to the ontological human being, okay, to the ontological unit called the human being, and the medicine itself changes its models to be more accommodating for traditional Chinese medicine types of diagnosis that is more holistic. Okay, so while the actual um, sciences, including physics, including cosmology, including everything, are adjusting their models to accommodate for more and more complex units, having the non-sciences, okay, having the astrological community, for example, trying to apply to outdated forms of the scientific endeavor in order for people to pay attention to us. That is not going to make us a science in the face of, people who see it as cargo like sciences. The value of a ritual is beyond the scientific. Okay, it is beyond the scientific. It's a ritual. It's taken from religious practices. Some things people can adapt to, but if you're only doing something that's been proven by science, then if you would be Feynman, you would have to wait to 2023 to understand that organic, um, like that I'm sorry, that fertilizers harm the soil and therefore on the long run affect the crops and affect the fertility of the land, okay, and make the crops more susceptible to pests basically. But you would have to be doing that on decades long science stuff, and so this is a real issue because while the scientific method is fascinating and it's lovely philosophically to think of what do I absolutely know that I know. Because truth changes, right? Astrology tells us every generation of outer planets, this is Chris Brennan insight, every generation of outer planets views astrology and the outer planets in a different way. Okay? If you have Pluto in Sagittarius, then I would get comments from people like, why are Sagittarians so possessive? And that would be a Pluto. So they would refer a person with Pluto in Sagittarius. So the nature of truth is in itself dynamic. The truth is dynamic. Okay. I just today I dropped, and I'll probably publish this video in another time, but I dropped Venus Wisdom on the Venus Day with Venus in Gemini. And one of the things that I addressed that when you talk about this in transit, Gemini archetype and Venus archetype are associated with lightness, flirtatiousness, banter, and if it's not something natural to you, to your native chart, you might like it when Venus is in Gemini, but when Venus gets to Cancer, you will be horrified by your partner if you started dating when Venus was in Gemini. Because if you enjoyed banter in Cancer, you're emo. And you can't, like, no, that's a no. That turns you, what got you hot in Gemini gets you completely shut off. Like, there's no ice queen, ice king. Like, no way to get to you through banter. No, 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 no. And this is a dynamic nature of the truth. So, if Venus was an outer planet, the people with Venus in Gemini would say, oh, if you want to be romantic with someone, banter, be flirtatious, play a little, not from a bad intention point of view, or play the field a little. Don't just date, one person in the beginning you don't know. You can commit to them and then you're not trustworthy because you didn't play the field. Then people with Venus in Cancer might go for, you need a person that hugs you, that looks you in the eyes, and you see their emotions flowing through or whatnot. And those would be two completely different depictions of Venus that are taken from completely different times. Okay? The way to astrology is way less rigorous. Right now, I talk about Aries a lot, but we only know Aries in Aries. Aries was discovered in the sign of Aries. Now we can do historical research and think, for example, J.P. Morgan had his Aries conjunct Vesta, conjunct the ascendant in Aquarius. He was born in the 1880s. Okay, so while that's useful as information, the majority of our generations of astrologers have been born with Aries in Aries and are operating through Aries in Aries. And so when we talk about Aries as Xena the warrior, this is what we know. And when I talk about Aries in this way, I always mention I don't know if I can separate completely the Aries asteroid from Aries the sign simply because we haven't had a lived experience of Aries in another sign, let alone Sedna, who is now about to enter Gemini in June. Who knows of the many things we associate Sedna with betrayal, with the Inuit myth, with this, with that. Who knows if that will still apply in Gemini? Venus rules Sedna is Venus is relationships, so maybe we'll think about betrayal in relationships. Okay, Venus and Saturn are enemies, so betrayal by Saturn people, like from the father. Okay, that can cloud the whole view of Sedna, and maybe not. Okay, I don't know. It's science. This is the science. It's not rigorous, and I was watching again Feynman with about the scientific method, and one of the examples that he mentioned, he said, "Oh, there are astrologers in America that say it's not good to go to the dentist when the moon is increasing," um, and this is true. It's an actual, valid, ancient astrological tip that have gone through the years. And the fact is that if you wanted to experiment in the scientific method or the methods that we are hoping to apply to or to imitate the forms, not much like the cargo cult sciences, they're trying to do a ritual in order to do engineering when engineering requires different methods than ritual efficacy. Okay, it doesn't mean that rituals are not working. It just means that to build an airplane and to make it land, you need more than a ritual. Okay, this is also what Leonardo da Vinci understood, because at this time there would be the academia, which was a patriarchal from the clergy word. Okay, patriarchal church. Okay, and the church would get these channelings, and only the channelings that got from the church about what the world is like would be considered cosmology. So if you wanted to study cosmology, you would go to the church like academia. Academia is still in the structure of the church. Okay? The dean, the mentorship, all these things, it's church structure. Um, with all the difficulties around that, okay? Chaos theory could not get people to sign their name on research. They could not get funding to research something that has become so prevalent in, you cannot ignore chaos theory when you talk about nonlinear systems, dynamic systems, where you try to predict something. Okay, try to understand Uranus silly walk. You know, that's more like it. So what Leonardo da Vinci understood is that whatever the church tells me, like that's okay. But if I look up in a body and look at how it really looks like, then I can make conclusions that the church cannot make. And it's not that Leonardo da Vinci was not channeling, he was, but he was testing it according to observation and seeing what works, what doesn't work. Okay? Um, in order to test just this thing, but that it's better not to go to the dentist when the moon is growing. Okay? You would need an experiment of at least 100 people, 30 minimum, but like at least 100 people of each skin color, race, gender, culture, whatnot, if you want to do precision medicine, and political issues around that, right? Is it racist to do a scientific experiment that categorizes people by skin color? Yeah. On the other hand, women have different side effects before a heart attack than men. But then, what is a woman if we have trans women? How does it work? I don't know. Okay, it works for people who are with a vagina. Okay, people with a vagina that did not change their sex, they would get different side effects before a heart attack than people with a penis who did not change their sex. That is all I can say. I cannot even say, even men and women, it's not a relevant category to discuss this today. And so for the scientific method, you would need all these, like 100 people of each group twice, at least, and to have that at least 4 times, because growing moon, decreasing moon, and then how would you accommodate for new moon and full moon? So double that, and that would have to be randomized control test, and all these people would have to go to the dentist or would have to have an operation that opens their blood veins. How ethical is that? And if you happen to be the one person that doesn't align with the norm, because how do you make a statistical research? You take all this data against a hypothesis called hypothesis zero. And then the comparison to hypothesis zero creates a sort of graph. Okay? And with this graph, it's not just the one line. Okay, there are people who are, we call this in Hebrew stiateken, okay, the people who go above the line, below the line, and so on and so forth. They're not calculated. So if you have a life risking phenomena that is once in a so, it won't even be written. And if you think that it would and people are that cautious, no, they're not. Um, and so patient-specific medicine is much more fit with holistic medicine, with the understanding that it doesn't matter what dogmas I know about the world, how I know that the left foot is this and the right foot and the right eye is that, and the nails is Saturn and the skin is Saturn and the throat is Venus, is Taurus or whatnot. Still, I have the dogma. I can talk to you. I can tell you how do we view it when we learn medicine. When you tell me of your symptoms, I can offer another point of view. I cannot tell you anything about you more than you. I can show you a different point of view. Only you can decide how it is relevant to you, because it will always be from my bias, from my perspective. I didn't do this today, but this is why when I begin my episode, I always say, my chart is out there. If somebody really cared to look all that much, then they they could contrast it against my chart, I always begin an episode with the chart of the day. This is the point of view from which I'm looking at things. I might not be seeing them in the same way. For surely I will be seeing more things or things differently in a different time frame and with a different chart. So what we call the truth is the lowest common denominator that does not account for those who are above and below the range of the line that we compare to a hypothesis zero, which is axiomatic. Okay, hypothesis zero is like an axiom that we test things against the axiom, and they have to align in a certain way for we to be calling that statistically significant data. This is the current form that we're trying to go for when we talk about meta-analysis, about statistical data, about research in the topic of astrology. It's not bad. Okay, it gives us interesting point of view. It tells wonderful stories, just like science does. It does not accommodate for the ritual of astrological magic, for different point of views that we get because the planets move to a sun. Pluto ingressed into Aquarius. How will Pluto Aquarius people view the world? Okay. Um, all those things matter. All those things matter. And it is an art just as much as it is a field of study. Here, when we talk about the science of the stars, we are not talking about double blind randomized control tests. Nor can we. And we cannot limit the scientific endeavor to double randomized control tests. It won't accommodate. Okay. The ritual that it takes to invite in material wealth and ideas and skills and well-being, they're not reduced to something, because you would have a ritual, then you would see something, and then the way that you would see it would be different from the way that another person would experience it. A person sees a black cat. So one person sees a black cat crossing the road. One person thinks, "Oh my God, this is bad luck. Relationships are going to be disrupted." Da, 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 da. Another person sees a cat crossing the road. It's like, "Oh, I asked for a sign from Lakshmi about the type of wealth that is both spiritual and material, and now I see a black cat crossing the road." I ask for a message of the spirit. I ask for Pluto to deliver wealth, Pluto and Lakshmi to work together to bring me wealth and well-being. And I see a black cat crossing the road. Okay. Omenology is quite personal. It's meant to be personal. There are the general things. Okay. A peacock in Israeli culture is a person that brags, and he puffed up and they have no essence. A peacock in Eastern cultures is the symbol of cognition and intuition and the wide array, okay, of the colors, like the crown of knowledge that of a sage. You can't reduce that to double-blind randomized tests. You can't, but what can you do? Hey, in other episodes of Spirit and Matter, I take a Wikipedia page about a famous person, and I did my first episode was actually about Feynman, and I try to predict what will I see in this chart. Some of the predictions are correct, some of the predictions are not correct. Also, some things can be ascribed to various yogas or various planets or various houses, various combinations. And so the more you know about astrology, the more predictions you can have. If you go to the ER, okay, wisdom from my thesis proposal, if you go to the ER, there are 1,500 possible diagnoses per each symptom you come with to the ER. Okay? This is what got me to do astrology. This is what got me to try to channel, because I realized that even my doctors, the one that actually managed to treat me, either they win the lottery or they're doing something hears because they would seem non-scientific. This is why I came here. Okay? And so um, it's we need to be cautious about reducing our study to what can be tested in outdated methods scientifically, in order to be accepted by peer-reviewed journals. Simply put, um, innovation is not founded by the conservatives. Okay? There would not be Sphere and Sundry if Sphere and Sundry had to be on grants in an Ivy League university studying if you can make a facial cream be enchanted with the magic of the planets and solve not only skin problems but also relationship issues, boundary issues, skin, Saturn, holistic speaking, and whatnot. There would not be Sphere and Sundry. They would not get funding. Nobody would take that seriously. Nobody would put their name on it. Even in the astrological community, Caitlin Kopic said, so many teachers have abandoned me because I was doing this new thing that she could do when astrology was not standardized. Will there be another Caitlin Kopic? If we standardized, if we only did randomized control tests, would there be another Caitlin Kopic? Would there be another Sphere and Sundry? Would we have more innovation in the field? Can you imagine the field of astrology without the founding innovators? That's destructive. Okay. And I've studied politics and governance, and I've seen that when people did political science in American campuses, some of them were not learning the history of politics. They were not learning about major conflicts, major crises. Like, they would not be learning about this. I don't know how these people went to Model UN, because like you can't really compete if you don't know. And they would not have solid background in political theory unless they also study like political philosophy is more like philosophy. There are some departments that teach that, but and the majority of peer-reviewed studies you could get your article on was if you did about only the things that you can look into from with statistical models, that is patterns of voting. So again, I have a lecturer, probably by now Professor Galerielli, that looked into the how identity affects patterns of voting. And this is fabulous. This is fabulous. Like, you can test that. You can do statistical models on that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You cannot do that if you do a more holistic view of identity. It would require more qualitative research. Yeah, but you absolutely can do large N studies and bring great insight. Plus, that was the instructor that I talked about non-duality, spirit and matter, and all these crazy things in his room, and he was very appreciative of that. Why? Because he was not stupid. He understood that he plays to a certain dogma of what we can learn, which is very interesting, but he's also aware of the limitation of what can be achieved with these statistical models. It's okay to do that as long as you're not stupid, as long as you don't think that this is astrology and whatever does not apply to that is not astrology. Or politics and or politics and governance. And that would get to the point of view that if you wanted to get your article published and to get funded and to keep being a researcher, you had to go and only learn patterns of voting. Only learn patterns of voting. What are the political and social and economical implications of only learning patterns of voting? right? So anything you wanted to do in more qualitative way would be under politics and governance and not political science, which is okay. What is not okay is that you don't get funded to do those things that are considered cargo cult sciences. And it's not, to have a magical ritual is not a cargo cult science. To try and achieve the public recognition of a science when your cargo cult science, it's really like making a statue of a plane and asking for the same plane to land, and the plane does not land at the same time. Because we know that if I manifest, for example, let's say I manifest to have a jet plane, okay? From a spiritual point of view, many things need to happen. I need to learn how to fly. I need to learn about sustainability of planes. I need to learn about birds. I need to learn how to fly in a way that is in accordance with birds, which I'm actually thinking about, um, or how to communicate with birds so much so that my plane can translate the signals of the birds and so not interfere in their flight, but also gain information where to fly if we can commune together. There are many things I need to study. From an engineering point of view, many things need to happen. Like I need to be able to lift off and change the air pressure above and below me so that I can stay in the air. So it's a different kind of difficult. From a spiritual point of view, if I only tend to the different air pressures in order to lift the plane off, I could get myself killed. From an engineering point of view, if I try to make a ritual, only try to make a ritual and a statue of a plane and a manifest flying a plane, I'm just not, nothing terrible is going to happen. I'm just not very likely to be able to fly a plane. I'm just not very likely to be able to lift off. And so that touches on spirit and matter issues. And this is why this is a cosmology episode. Okay? Non-duality is a, a paradigm that accommodates for these differences, for how something of the non-matter can affect matter, how they're both related and can also be not related. Okay, what we associate with things. I'm not saying this is the only paradigm. What I am saying is that maintaining diversity of paradigms and not trying to decide between them on the by the standards of the lowest common denominator is benefic both politically, socially, and scientifically. Um, so and my cat managed to sleep the whole speech through, and they're like right there. I can't show them. It's so interesting. Um, so uh, I don't think that we should take seriously people who don't take us seriously. If somebody dedicated their whole life to do randomized control tests, I don't think it's relevant to try to make yourself seen in their eyes. What is relevant is to make sure that we maintain diversity of epistemic standards and diversity of ontological standards, because those two change. Okay, if we have a ton of planets in an Earth sign, various things can happen. Is both that we are more interested in the matter of things, that we learn about something through its matter form, and that we find spirit within the matter. Okay, or maybe animism begins to emerge from this condensed energy in this Earth sign. Okay. If many things are in the air sign, then we are more likely to look into patterns of air. We can both try to look for the lowest common denominator, as happens with Aquarius, and this is a natural tendency of human being. Okay, we should not shame ourselves for wanting to be seen or wanting unity. But we also need to keep in mind that air is intricate. And even if you know to fly a plane, then you know how difficult it is to maintain on air because you need a lot of flexibility and a lot of accommodation that just doing Newtonian mechanics does not always. And if you are the one plane that got into a limbo and ended up in another world, part of the world or the cosmos, and don't know how it happened yourself, then no one will look at you in the scientific community. You would have to have divergent paradigms to try and see what's happened. I recently did a Venus post on non-dual reality and love spells. Okay, like for example, the if you have there is a phenomena in the astral world called shape shifting. Okay, and this is something that has been known to ancients, and so it can confuse a person very much because something can take the form or the shape of something else. Yeah. And sometimes that something else is not something you knew before. So you're like, okay, if I didn't know this being before and I'm being exposed in 3D, so this is the person. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, if you haven't discussed with the person, what are they doing? Like I discussed with my psychologist, we talked about whatever was energy like that was talked about. But if you don't talk about this, then you don't know. But the beautiful thing is that to protect your energy boundaries, you don't need to know where it came from. You just return it to sender. That's it. Okay, if you don't want it, you return it to sender. And if somebody takes the form of shape shifting, then you have no way to know this. But what you can know is that if I don't talk about this with the person in 3D, all I am left to assume is that there's some shape shifting energy, and that's it. Okay, and then if it is something that is good for me, good. If it's something that's not good for me, then vanish. Okay? Is it that the person is gaslighting you or that genuinely is not them? We don't have a scientific way to know that. What we do have is the ability to protect ourselves, to deflect energy, to set boundaries, and so on and so forth. So this is common knowledge to people who do astral projection or people who experience other people who did astral projection or whatnot. And also there are people who did astral projection and did not know that what they were doing was affecting another person. And then they realized, oh my gosh, I was not, like they were not consenting to that. Um, and understood that, hey, you need consent also in the astral field. So you don't just do things and like, oh, I'm in the astral plane. They won't know about it. They can feel that, and they might not know who it is. But if you're a genuine person, you know not to do things in the astral field, not to initiate with the person that did not willingly consent to you. That can create awkward situation and also very frightening situation for people. Okay, like it is violation of sexual boundaries. Like we don't want to put people in that way. It's no. So that is not something you can discuss with randomized control tests. Therefore, if a person deals with that, they need to go to people who deal with that and have their own point of view and have their own methods and a praxis to deal with that. If you try to go to your, I don't know, mental health care or to your doctor, they would prescribe a ton of pills to you that could even kill you and would not help. Okay? Because you haven't tackled it at the right level of interference for you. You haven't accepted or validated certain something. You're like, either you think you're imagining or you think you're in a limbo, and then you seem psychotic. It's like, no, if you go to, you just watch YouTube by African women who teach you how to deal with spiritual rape. Like, this is an actual thing. I did not know that. Okay. Um, Or when I read about the Moon talisman of Sphere and Sundering, Caitlin talked about you need to use also Deneb Algadi with this because there are Regulian figures that are trying to to come in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's talking about what the African woman calls spiritual rape. Like, ah, okay, so this is what you do that, okay? And that's not something that you can reduce to science. It's also not something you can talk about with science. And this is why it's being done on a Venus day, because, hey, you know, you don't want your magic practitioner or astrology teacher to be telling you they, meaning the people who take care of the healthcare in your culture, don't know what's energy. You don't want that. You don't want that. You don't want for people to not be able to talk about what to do in case of violation of your energy boundaries and how astrology or astrological magic can help. You don't want that. And that makes me think, why is Caitlin Kapok struggled so much to bring her talismans to view? She's a woman. Why was it so difficult for her to establish her authority and her voice in the magical community? Was it just metals? Or was there something else there? Because Caitlin Kapok tells us, oh, you can use Danab Algadine, you can protect yourself from spiritual rape. Okay? That's a it's not just a women issue, it's also a man issue, but that's something that you don't hear talked about with other magicians as well, like as much, because they didn't encounter that, or they didn't deal with that, or they don't know. Okay, it can be that the person is doing something astrally and thinks that the other person is not affected, but the other person is affected. Okay? Not even all people know that love spells are something that's not only not ethical to do, but it's also backfiring. Okay, there are, I've even seen talismans of Venus, talismans, okay, that were meant to enamor a specific other. And I'm not saying, God forbid, that they meant to hurt the rights of another human being. Not that, I'm not even saying that this is what they do in praxis. Um, but the fact that magic was used in a way that was not in alignment with the agreement of the desired person is a fact. Also, when I talked about manifestation, before I began to even do astrology on videos, I was speaking about never do manifestation for love or relationship that is specific. Only even if you are married for, I don't know, and have children, okay? Always then to what you desire in a relationship in general. And then either your spouse meets it or somebody meets it, or something happens in your life and you discover who is the person that I can meet those needs with. It's also my constant relationship advice. Always manifest what you want for you, not for a specific other. You can try that with your specific other, not in manifestation, but in praxis. If they fulfill it, great. If not, they don't. And this is also how you know you need to move on. Okay? If you need to move on. Sometimes you do. And that's okay. We are changing as well. Um, yeah, what more have I got to say? Oh, so standardizing and applying to, and it's cliche to say patriarchal pointers. It's not patriarchal. There are many women scientists, and there are many men who are very energy oriented and know these things and explain these things. Like, it's not a gender issue per se. That being said, it's not constructive to the well-being of our practitioners and clients to reduce ourselves to outdated scientific methods. Okay? Because that would make us a cargo cult like science, the cargo cult science, yeah, and that would make our planes not land. That's that. So, or not lift off. Bye bye.